Welcome back to Chapter 7, Section 1. This is Part 2. I'm going to try a different format today. Let's see how it goes. I'm going to share my notebook, and yet you can still see my face up there. So this is Algebra 2, Chapter 7.1, Part 2. We are on page 361, numbers 4 through 5. We're going to figure out how to determine if two variables are directly related or vary directly or inversely vary or neither based on a table. And then we're going to make some equations on page 362, numbers 6 through 8. Let's remember real quick some easy examples from part 1 of chapter 7, section 1. Like if we were given an equation, this was number 1 on the previous page, 6x equals y. This varied directly, correct? Because the y and the x were separate. And if we decided to, we could divide both sides by x, and we would see that when we have y over x, it's equal to just one number. It's equal to 6 in this case. Likewise, if we had an equation like xy equals negative 0.25, when the x's and the y's are on the same side and they're being multiplied, we know that this equation varies inversely, because when x and y are multiplied with each other, they're equal to just one number. And then finally, if it comes out to something different, like y plus x equals 10, an equation we remember from Algebra 1, then it is neither. So the trick for the tables is that we are going to be looking for y over x, and to see if we can get one number every time, we'll know it's direct. If we do x times y and get the same number every time, we know it's inversely related, okay? So I'm gonna copy down number 4 on page 361 for you. You should copy it down as well. The table they gave us looks like this. Of course, it looks nicer in the book. All right, so we want to look for two things, correct? We want to look to see what happens if we multiply x times y together, and we want to see what happens if we divide y by x. So let's just multiply together. Get out a calculator if you need to. So if we multiply x times y right here, 20 times negative 4 is negative 80. 15 times negative 3 is negative 45. Already, I realize that these are not the same number. So this is not inversely related. Let's see if it varies directly. So we're going to do y divided by x. That's very important. 20 divided by negative 4 is negative 5. 15 divided by negative 3 is negative 5. Okay, we can't just stop there. 10 divided by negative 2 is negative 5, and 5 divided by negative 1 is negative 5. We have all the same numbers when we divide y by x. And if you remember up here, if we get the same number when you divide y by x, it is directly related. So we know that these two terms they vary directly. Vary directly. Okay, let's try number 5. The table they got us, which you should be copying down as well. And keep in mind, notice how I'm organizing things. I'm trying to keep the things that I'm writing, the two different tables, right above and below each other, so it's in order. 1 and 60, 2 and 30, 3 and 20. I hope you're actually thinking about what is happening as you write it. So first thing, we're going to say xy. Multiplying is just easier than dividing, right? So 60 times 1 is 60. 30 times 2 is 60. 20 times 3 is 60. And 15 times 4 is 60. I don't have to go any further. When I multiply x and y together, I get the same number each time. That means that these are inversely related, or they vary inversely. I know I'm using different words, but here is the key. It is inversely related. Now, what happens if you multiply x, y together and they're not the same number? Then you divide y by x and they're not the same number. Well, you guessed it, that is going to be neither. They don't vary directly, they don't vary inversely. Okay? I'll have practice for you later. I'm going to turn the page right now. You are going to turn to page 362. We're going to do numbers 6 through 8. We're going to be making equations. All right. On page 362, the directions, and you should be looking at it, don't take my word for it. So we know it's telling us the variables x and y vary inversely. Use the given values to write an equation relating x and y. Then find y when x equals 2. So they are telling us that these are inversely related. Now, that's one of two things. That really means that we have an equation that looks like this. X times y is 4 times 5, 20. So we can just multiply the two numbers together. But this isn't good enough for me. Sorry, children. You're going to need to divide both sides by x. And here is your equation. This is the only acceptable one. Y is equal to 20 over x. Where did we get that 20 from? Multiplying 4 times 5, the two numbers they gave us. X is going to be in the denominator, y is going to be by itself. Easier to graph that way, remember. Okay, so they vary inversely. Use the given values to write an equation. Here we go. Now we need to find out what is y when x equals 2. So we're going to plug in 2 for x, and we find out that y equals 10. All right, let's try number 7 and see if we can get comfortable with making equations for inverse variation. So x and y, we're going to multiply them together. And then, because Mr. Mitchell is a stickler, we're dividing both sides by x. Here's our equation. Now the book is asking us to find out what happens when x is 2. So we plug in 2, and we find out that y equals -3. Okay? All right, I'll do the last one with you. And then we'll, of course, have practice in our book. All right, x equals 1/2, y equals 16. So first thing we do is multiply 1/2 times 16, which is 8. Divide both sides by x. Y equals x over 8. Or sorry, 8 over x. The book wants us to know what happens when x is 2. So we plug in 2, and we get y equals 4. All right, so that's the last part of 7-1, looking at tables to find out if two values are varying directly or inversely, or not at all. There's going to be some of those in your practice. Remember, that means that there is no constant number here, and there is no constant number here. And then taking two values, forming an equation when we know that they are inversely related by multiplying, making sure that that number goes on top of x, y is by itself, and then you're going to be told to plug something in for x to find the value of y. And that was page 362, number 8. Okay.